Blind date disaster. The mechanic walked in. The paralyzed female CEO never expected to smile again. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The restaurant glowed with soft amber light, the kind that made every wine glass sparkle and every whisper feel like a secret. The gentle clinking of cutlery filled the air as laughter drifted from nearby tables. Evelyn Hart adjusted the folds of her dark satin dress, her fingers trembling slightly as she straightened the napkin across her lap. It had been 14 months since the accident. 14 months since she'd gone from walking across corporate stages to rolling through boardrooms in a wheelchair. Tonight was supposed to be her first step well, her first rollback into the world beyond recovery and work. Her friend insisted she try a blind date. It's just dinner, they said. You deserve to smile again. But sitting there, she wasn't sure she could. Every movement of the waiters reminded her of control she no longer had. Every polished reflection in the restaurant windows threw her old self back at her, standing tall, untouchable, powerful, until the crash changed everything. She glanced toward the door, expecting the sleek figure of Nathan Blake, the finance consultant she'd been matched with online. Instead, a man in a grease-stained jacket stepped in, shaking rain from his hair. He looked completely out of place amid the crystal chandeliers. His jeans were faded, his boots muddy, his eyes bright and uncertain as he scanned the room. The maître d'hôtel frowned, already moving toward him, but the man raised a hand. "I'm here for a date," he said softly, voice rough but polite. He looked at the reservation card near her table and hesitated. "Evelyn?" She blinked. "Yes?" The name slipped out before she could stop it. The hostess was distracted at another table, and before Evelyn could process what was happening, he smiled awkwardly and sat down. "Sorry I'm late," he said, brushing water from his sleeves. Traffic was brutal. Evelyn's brain froze. This wasn't the man from the profile photo. Not even close. The other Nathan had polished hair and a suit. This one looked like he'd just come from fixing a truck in the rain. But something in his eyes, warm, genuine, curious, stopped her from correcting him. "It's fine," she murmured. "I just got here." He grinned, and for the first time in months, she saw no pity in a man's gaze. "I'm Noah," he said, extending a hand, then hesitated, glancing at her wheelchair. "Sorry, Habit." "It's okay," she said quietly, shaking his hand anyway. His grip was firm but gentle. "So," he said, glancing at the menu, "what's good here? Everything looks too fancy to pronounce." She almost laughed, but covered it with a sip of water. "That depends. Do you like words you can't spell or prices that make you cry?" Noah chuckled, leaning closer as if sharing a secret. "I usually just go for something that doesn't come with a payment plan." She found herself smiling, really smiling for the first time in ages. When the waiter arrived, Noah ordered a simple dish, mispronouncing the name so badly even the waiter had to bite back a laugh. Evelyn expected to feel embarrassed, but instead, she felt lighter. For a brief moment, she wasn't the paralyzed CEO everyone whispered about. She was just a woman on a date with someone refreshingly real. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. "Hi, Evelyn. I'm here to 9 by the window. Can't wait to meet you. Nathan." Her heart stopped. Slowly, she looked up at Noah. He noticed the change in her face immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked. She swallowed hard, embarrassment flooding her cheeks. "You're not Nathan, are you?" His brow furrowed. No, definitely not." They stared at each other, realization dawning at the same time. Evelyn covered her face with a groan. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're at the wrong table." He blinked, then smiled in disbelief. "Guess that's why the app didn't ask for my credit card." She couldn't help it, she laughed, shoulders shaking. The sound startled even her. "You must think I'm ridiculous," she said. "No," he replied softly. "I think it's the best mix-up I've had all week." He stood, still smiling, and reached for his jacket. "Have a good dinner, Evelyn." Then he was gone, leaving behind a faint smell of rain and engine oil and something she hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. She looked down at the table and saw his napkin. A faint sketch in pencil, a quick doodle of a car engine. He'd signed it with one word, Noah. Her fingers brushed the edge of the paper as a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. She didn't know it yet, but that sketch and the man who drew it would soon change everything. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city washed clean under a pale blue sky. Evelyn Hart stared out from the window of her penthouse, coffee cooling untouched in her hand. The napkin sketch lay on the table beside her wheelchair, edges still damp from last night's rain. She should have thrown it away. It was just a doodle from a stranger who had accidentally sat at her table. But something about it, those careful pencil lines, that confident signature, made her hesitate. Noah, she whispered under her breath, tracing the name with her finger. Maybe she kept it because it reminded her that she could still laugh, that someone could look at her and not just see the chair. Down in the streets below, the hum of traffic and distant horns echoed through the glass. She sighed, turning her chair toward her work desk. The screen glowed with unread messages. Engineers, investors, meetings. Her company, Hart Robotics, was preparing for a major product relaunch, but even success felt hollow now. She had built machines to help people move, yet she could not move without one. As she scrolled through blueprints, her phone buzzed. Car service confirmed for 2 p.m., her assistant texted. Board meeting at the lab. Evelyn set the phone aside. It was time to face the world again. Hours later, her sleek black sedan rolled into the company parking lot. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions about her condition and her return. She ignored them, as always, keeping her expression calm. But when the car stopped at the ramp, her driver stepped out to assist and the ramp jammed halfway down. A groan of metal echoed in the rain gutter. "Great," the driver muttered. Before he could fix it, a voice came from behind. "Mind if I take a look?" Evelyn turned and froze. Noah stood there, sleeves rolled up, a wrench tucked into his back pocket. His hair was damp again, his smile the same as last night, warm, disarming, real. "You," she said, half surprised, half amused. "You are the guy from the restaurant." "Guilty," he replied, crouching beside the ramp. "Looks like the hydraulic pin's bent. Give me 2 minutes." Before she could answer, he was already working, hands moving with steady confidence. The driver stepped aside, bewildered. Evelyn watched him tighten bolts, test the hinges, then knock the frame twice with the wrench. The ramp hissed, released, and lowered perfectly to the ground. "There," he said, standing up and wiping his hands on his jacket. "Good as new." "You fixed it," she said softly. Mechanic's instinct, he grinned. "It is kind of what I do." "You work here?" she asked, curiosity flickering. "Not exactly. I fix cars for the company next door. They called me to tow a delivery van that broke down." He paused, glancing at her wheelchair, then added, "Guess I am lucky I parked in the wrong spot again." She smiled despite herself. "You seem to have a talent for showing up when things malfunction." "Hey, someone has to keep gravity in check," he said, and she laughed again, quiet but real. As he turned to leave, she stopped him. "Wait," she said. "You did not tell me your last name." "Brooks," he replied. "Noah Brooks." "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," she said, extending her hand. "For last night, and for this." "Any time, Miss Hart," he said, shaking her hand gently. He was about to walk away when she added, "Evelyn, you can just call me Evelyn." He looked back, surprised, then nodded. "All right, Evelyn, have a good meeting." She watched him go, the crowd of reporters forgotten. Inside the building, her assistant whispered, "Who was that?" Evelyn only smiled faintly. "Just someone who fixed what was broken." But as she entered the boardroom, her mind was elsewhere, on the sound of his laugh, on the warmth of his hand, and on a question she had not dared ask herself in months. Could something so simple as kindness really start to heal her again? Outside, Noah glanced once more toward the tall glass tower before getting into his truck. The napkin sketch she had kept, he had drawn it absent-mindedly, never imagining it would end up in her hands. Yet somehow, he felt the story between them was not over. And neither of them knew it yet, but the next time their paths crossed, it would not be by accident. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city washed clean under a pale blue sky. Evelyn Hart stared out from the window of her penthouse, coffee cooling untouched in her hand. The napkin sketch lay on the table beside her wheelchair, edges still damp from last night's rain. She should have thrown it away. It was just a doodle from a stranger who had accidentally sat at her table. But something about it, those careful pencil lines, that confident signature, made her hesitate. "Noah," she whispered under her breath, tracing the name with her finger. Maybe she kept it because it reminded her that she could still laugh, that someone could look at her and not just see the chair. Down in the streets below, the hum of traffic and distant horns echoed through the glass. She sighed, turning her chair toward her work desk. The screen glowed with unread messages, engineers, investors, meetings. Her company, Hart Robotics, was preparing for a major product relaunch, but even success felt hollow now. She had built machines to help people move, yet she could not move without one. As she scrolled through blueprints, her phone buzzed. Car service confirmed for 2 p.m., her assistant texted. Board meeting at the lab. Evelyn set the phone aside. It was time to face the world again. Hours later, her sleek black sedan rolled into the company parking lot. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions about her condition and her return. She ignored them, as always, keeping her expression calm. But when the car stopped at the ramp, her driver stepped out to assist and the ramp jammed halfway down. A groan of metal echoed in the rain gutter. "Great," the driver muttered. Before he could fix it, a voice came from behind. "Mind if I take a look?" Evelyn turned and froze. Noah stood there, sleeves rolled up, a wrench tucked into his back pocket. His hair was damp again, his smile the same as last night, warm, disarming, real. "You?" she said, half surprised, half amused. "You are the guy from the restaurant." "Guilty," he replied, crouching beside the ramp. "Looks like the hydraulic pin's bent. Give me 2 minutes." Before she could answer, he was already working, hands moving with steady confidence. The driver stepped aside, bewildered. Evelyn watched him tighten bolts, test the hinges, then knock the frame twice with the wrench. The ramp hissed, released, and lowered perfectly to the ground. "There," he said, standing up and wiping his hands on his jacket. "Good as new." "You fixed it," she said softly. "Mechanic's instinct," he grinned. "It is kind of what I do." "You work here?" she asked, curiosity flickering. "Not exactly. I fix cars for the company next door. They called me to tow a delivery van that broke down." He paused, glancing at her wheelchair, then added, "Guess I am lucky I parked in the wrong spot again." She smiled despite herself. "You seem to have a talent for showing up when things malfunction." "Hey, someone has to keep gravity in check," he said, and she laughed again, quiet but real. As he turned to leave, she stopped him. "Wait," she said. "You did not tell me your last name." "Brooks," he replied. "Noah Brooks." "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," she said, extending her hand. "For last night, and for this." "Any time, Miss Hart," he said, shaking her hand gently. He was about to walk away when she added, "Evelyn, you can just call me Evelyn." He looked back, surprised, then nodded. "All right, Evelyn, have a good meeting." She watched him go, the crowd of reporters forgotten. Inside the building, her assistant whispered, "Who was that?" Evelyn only smiled faintly. Just someone who fixed what was broken. But as she entered the boardroom, her mind was elsewhere, on the sound of his laugh, on the warmth of his hand, and on a question she had not dared ask herself in months. Could something so simple as kindness really start to heal her again? Outside, Noah glanced once more toward the tall glass tower before getting into his truck. The napkin sketch she had kept, he had drawn it absent-mindedly, never imagining it would end up in her hands. Yet somehow he felt the story between them was not over. And neither of them knew it yet, but the next time their paths crossed, it would not be by accident. 2 weeks had passed since the day Noah fixed the ramp outside Hart Robotics, yet Evelyn found herself thinking about him more than she wanted to admit. Every time she rolled past that same entrance, she half expected to see his truck parked nearby, his sleeves rolled up, a streak of grease on his hand, and that easy smile that somehow made the world feel lighter. But he never appeared again. At least, not until the stormy night the power went out at the lab. It was close to midnight, and Evelyn was still in her office finalizing prototype reports for the new mobility exoskeleton, her company's most ambitious project since the accident that left her paralyzed. Suddenly the lights flickered, and the hum of machines died. The entire building fell silent except for the distant thunder outside. Her heart jumped. Without power, the elevator and automatic doors would lock down. She moved quickly toward the hallway, but the storm had already flooded part of the loading bay, trapping her path. Then came a voice, muffled but steady. "Anyone still in here?" She froze. That voice, she knew it. Moments later, the emergency door burst open, and Noah stepped inside, rain dripping from his jacket. "Evelyn?" he called, scanning the dim corridor. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to sound composed even as relief washed over her. Your guard called the garage next door, he said. Said a breaker blew and you were still inside. I came to check. I'm fine, she insisted, though her hands trembled as she tried to maneuver around the puddle spreading across the floor. The wheels slipped. Before she could react, Noah was there, steadying the chair. Easy, he murmured. Floor's slick. His voice was calm, his hands gentle but sure. They moved together toward the backup power room, flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. You really should not be doing this alone, he said. And you should not be running into flooded buildings, she shot back. He chuckled softly. Guess we are both bad at following rules? He opened the panel, inspecting the circuits. Looks like a short near the main fuse. I can patch it temporarily. You are a mechanic, not an electrician, she said, half teasing. Mechanics fix what is broken, he replied, smiling. Does not really matter what it is. She watched him work, his focus unwavering. In the flickering light, she noticed small details she had missed before: the faint scar across his jaw, the calluses on his fingers, the quiet confidence of someone who knew how to rebuild things piece by piece. When the generator finally hummed back to life, the hall lights blinked on. She let out a shaky laugh. You really do have a timing issue, Mr. Brooks. Always showing up exactly when something breaks. He met her eyes. Maybe that is the only way I know how to help. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Not awkward, just aware. Thank you, she said finally. You keep fixing things I am supposed to handle myself. Maybe you should let someone help once in a while, he said softly. She looked away, unsure how to answer. Her independence had been her armor for so long. Letting someone in felt like surrender. But the sincerity in his tone disarmed her. Maybe, she admitted. As he packed his tools, thunder rumbled again outside. You should not drive home in this weather, she said. The garage has a spare maintenance suite. Stay there tonight. You sure? He asked. It is company property. I think the CEO can make an exception, she said, a hint of humor in her voice. Besides, it is safer than the road. He hesitated, then nodded. Only if you promise to get some sleep too, Evelyn. No promises, she replied, smiling faintly. He walked her to the private elevator, waiting until the doors closed. As the lift ascended, Evelyn caught her reflection in the polished steel tired, but smiling in a way she had not for a long time. Downstairs, Noah lingered for a moment, looking around the vast, humming lab filled with prototypes and parts. On a nearby desk lay the blueprint for the exoskeleton, a design meant to help others walk again. He stared at it, jaw tightening slightly, then turned off the light. Neither of them knew that this small act of staying through the storm would set off a chain of moments that neither success nor tragedy could undo. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the glass panels of Hart Robotics, painting streaks of gold across the polished floors. Evelyn rolled into the testing lab, her hair still slightly damp from her rushed shower. She had barely slept, replaying every moment of last night: the storm, the laughter, the way Noah's eyes softened when he looked at her. He had kept his word, staying in the maintenance suite to wait out the storm. When she arrived, he was already there, sleeves rolled up, examining one of the robotic limb prototypes like it was a puzzle begging to be solved. You start early, she said, surprised. You too, he replied without looking up. Your servo motors hum unevenly. Mind if I check? Be my guest, she said, curious. He reached for a small wrench and adjusted a joint connection. The mechanism flexed smoothly, almost lifelike. Evelyn blinked. How did you do that? Instinct, he said with a grin. Machines talk if you listen carefully. She laughed, shaking her head. Most of my engineers rely on data sheets. You rely on intuition. Guess that is why I am not an engineer, he replied. Just a guy who likes fixing things that people give up on. She watched him closely, noting how effortlessly he moved, how his hands understood what her mind had been trying to solve for weeks. Something in her chest stirred not admiration alone, but the quiet comfort of being understood without having to explain. Hours passed unnoticed. They worked side by side, testing components and reprogramming sensors. When one of the circuits sparked, Noah instinctively reached forward, shielding her from the burst. She looked at him in shock. You could have burned yourself. Better me than you, he said simply, shaking off the faint sting. The room fell silent again, but this time it was filled with something unspoken. Later that afternoon, her assistant entered. Miss Hart, the board wants a progress update. The investors are getting nervous about the delays. Evelyn sighed. Tell them we are on schedule. We? Noah asked after the assistant left. You mean you and your team? No, she said slowly. I mean you too. He frowned. Evelyn, I just fix cars. You build robots that change lives. Exactly, she said, her gaze steady. You see things differently, and that is what this project needs. For a moment, he said nothing, then nodded. All right. But if I am in, I am doing it my way. Deal, she said. In the following days, Noah became a constant presence in the lab. He refused the formal technician title, calling himself a temporary problem solver. Yet everyone noticed the change. Evelyn smiled more. The prototypes worked better. Even the atmosphere in the building felt lighter. During one late-night session, she dropped a pen from her wheelchair. Before he could reach down to pick it up, she leaned forward, struggling to grasp it herself. He froze, understanding what she was doing, pushing herself to move past her limits. The pen slipped from her fingers, but he did not move. Do not help me, she said breathlessly, determination hardening her voice. Slowly, with visible effort, she lifted her hand again, this time gripping the pen between trembling fingers. She exhaled sharply, then laughed through the tears in her eyes. Got it, you did, Noah said softly, pride flickering across his face. He crouched down beside her. You know, every time you push yourself, you make it harder for anyone to see you as broken. She looked at him, emotions swirling beneath the surface. I stopped believing I could rebuild after the accident, she said. But lately, I do not know. Maybe I was wrong. You were, he said gently. You are not what happened to you, Evelyn. You are what you build from it. She stared at him for a long moment, the sound of machines humming around them, and for the first time in years, she felt something fragile yet fierce awaken inside her. Hope. Outside, night fell again, casting reflections of the city skyline against the glass walls. Two people stood under the soft glow of fluorescent lights, a woman who had lost her way, and a man who refused to let her stay lost. Neither of them noticed how naturally their hands brushed as they reached for the same tool. Neither of them pulled away. The silence that followed was not empty. It was a promise unspoken, but real. Weeks turned into a steady rhythm of progress. Every morning, the lab came alive with quiet determination. Evelyn's wheelchair glided smoothly across the polished floor as she and Noah tested new control modules and calibration sensors. She had begun calling the project Phoenix, a name that made Noah smile every time he heard it. Rising from ashes, huh? He teased once. Exactly, she said. Because that is what it feels like. They had developed an easy rhythm. She handled the coding and system logic while he handled the mechanical fine-tuning. They joked, argued about designs, and sometimes sat in silence that felt more intimate than words. One evening, Evelyn stayed late again. The city lights shimmered through the glass as she adjusted a motion sensor on the prototype arm. Noah was tightening bolts nearby. You never go home early, he said. Neither do you, she replied without looking up. Fair point, he said, setting his wrench down. You know, most people do not see the person behind the title. They see Hart Robotics, not Evelyn Hart. But you are more than that. She blinked, caught off guard. More than what? More than a CEO in a chair. You're someone who refuses to give up. His words lingered in the air. She looked away, trying to hide the faint redness in her cheeks. Do you ever get tired of fixing everyone else's problems? She asked softly. Sometimes, he admitted, but helping you does not feel like a problem to fix. It feels like purpose. She met his gaze then, and for a brief, electric second, the world outside ceased to exist. The hum of machines faded. The ticking clock stopped mattering. Then the intercom buzzed. Miss Hart, her assistant's voice said, we have a situation in the finance wing. Evelyn frowned and wheeled toward the exit. Come with me. In the conference room, tension hung thick. Her cousin, Damon Hart, sat at the head of the table, flipping through financial sheets. Evelyn, he said smoothly, we need to discuss the Phoenix project. The board thinks it is draining too many resources. The project is our future, she said. We are weeks away from breakthrough testing. Damon smiled coldly. Breakthroughs do not pay investors. You are chasing sentiment, not science. Noah stepped forward before she could reply. She is not chasing sentiment, he said firmly. She is building something that will change lives, including hers. Damon's eyes narrowed. And you are? Someone who believes in her work, Noah said. Damon scoffed. A mechanic, I presume? How touching. Evelyn's hands tightened on her armrests. Enough. Noah has done more for this project in a month than your team has in a year. Damon's voice dropped. Careful, cousin. You are still the face of this company, but not its owner. The board can vote you out if the quarterly losses continue. He gathered his papers and stood. End the Phoenix project before it ends you. After he left, the room fell silent. Evelyn stared at the glossy table surface, her reflection fractured by light. He is right about one thing, she said quietly. If this fails, they will remove me. Noah crouched beside her chair, his voice steady. Then we make sure it does not fail. You do not understand, she whispered. They already think I am weak. Then prove them wrong, he said. Let them see the woman who refuses to stay broken. She inhaled shakily, then nodded. All right, no more playing safe. Tomorrow we test full integration. Tomorrow, he agreed. As they left the room, Noah noticed the unease in her eyes. He wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but deep down he sensed something darker at play. Something Damon was hiding. Later that night, long after Evelyn had gone home, Noah returned to the lab to double-check the system's wiring. As he reviewed the digital logs, a strange entry caught his attention. A file upload time-stamped during the power outage weeks ago. Unauthorized access. His pulse quickened. Someone had tampered with the Phoenix system. He stared at the screen, realization dawning. The same pattern matched the diagnostics from Evelyn's car accident report he had once read online. Someone had done this before, and now they were doing it again. He clenched his jaw, determination hardening his eyes. Whatever was happening inside Hart Robotics was no accident, and this time he was not going to let anyone hurt her again. The following morning, the tension inside Hart Robotics was sharp enough to cut through. Evelyn arrived early, unaware that Noah had not gone home at all. He had spent the entire night combing through the system logs, cross-referencing old security data, and the deeper he dug, the more disturbing the pattern became. The same access code that had triggered the lab's power failure was connected to the same encrypted profile found in the investigation file from Evelyn's car crash a year ago. It was not an accident back then. It had been sabotage. When she rolled into the lab, Noah stood by the terminal, his face pale but determined. Evelyn, he said, his voice low, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward her. Rows of data blinked across the monitor. What am I looking at? She asked. Proof, he said. Your accident was not random. Someone tampered with the braking software in your car, and whoever did that is trying to compromise Phoenix now. Her hands froze on the armrests. That is impossible, she whispered. We already closed that investigation. The police found nothing. Because the person behind it is on the inside, he said, and I think it is Damon. Her eyes widened. My cousin? He has access to the old design files and the financial incentive to shut you down. He is setting up a failure so he can push you out and take over the company. Evelyn's pulse raced. You cannot accuse him without evidence. That is why I stayed, Noah said, to find it. He handed her a flash drive. Everything is here, but we need to show it publicly, where he cannot bury it. She stared at the drive, fear and anger clashing behind her calm expression. The product reveal, she murmured. It is in 3 days. All eyes will be on the company. Exactly, Noah said. If we play this right, the truth comes out in front of everyone. Over the next few days, they worked in secret, refining the Phoenix prototype while compiling data that linked Damon's login to both incidents. It was dangerous, but Evelyn felt something she had not in months' purpose sharpened by justice. On the eve of the event, Damon cornered her outside her office. Still chasing your miracle project? He sneered. You should have listened to me. Maybe, she said coldly. But I would rather fail on my own terms than live under your lies. His smile faltered for a moment. Careful, cousin. Do not make enemies you cannot handle. She met his gaze without flinching. You already made me one. The next day, the company auditorium buzzed with media and investors. Cameras lined the aisles, banners displaying Hart Robotics. Rebuilding motion glowed behind the stage. Evelyn sat poised beside the prototype unit, wearing a tailored suit that matched the quiet strength in her eyes. Noah stood backstage, laptop in hand, ready. Damon took the stage first, oozing confidence as he began his speech about innovation and family legacy. Evelyn listened, jaw tight, until he reached the demo segment. And now, Damon said grandly, our CEO will demonstrate the latest Phoenix system, a project made possible by the combined efforts of our team. Evelyn rolled forward to the podium, her expression calm but unyielding. "Thank you, Damon," she said. "But before we show the world what Phoenix can do, there is something else the world deserves to see." She nodded toward Noah, who triggered the main display. The big screen flickered, then revealed the data logs, timestamps, access IDs, and video snippets showing Damon entering the restricted lab during the night of the accident, and again during the recent power outage. Gasps filled the room. Reporters began shouting questions. Damon's face turned ghostly white. "This is a setup," he shouted, stepping forward. "Lies." "No," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "It is the truth. You sabotaged your own family to steal what we built together." Security moved in as the crowd erupted. Damon tried to rush toward her, but Noah intercepted him, holding him back until authorities arrived. As they led Damon away, Evelyn sat still, heart pounding. The room slowly quieted. Cameras focused on her. She looked into the lens and said softly, "This project was never about walking again. It was about standing for what is right." Then, with trembling determination, she activated the Phoenix unit. The mechanical frame attached to her chair hissed softly as it lifted her upward. Gasps echoed again as she stood unsteady, but standing. Noah watched from the side, his eyes shining with pride. In that moment the headlines changed. The woman once called broken had not only walked again, she had risen above everything that tried to destroy her. And this time, she was not alone. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of headlines, interviews, and corporate meetings. Evelyn Hart's name was everywhere, the paralyzed CEO who stood for justice. The footage of her standing at the Phoenix reveal spread across the internet like wildfire. She had become not only a symbol of innovation, but of resilience, proof that strength was not measured by perfection, but by perseverance. Yet amid the noise and praise, she found herself missing the quiet moments in the lab, where things were simpler, where it was just her, Noah, and the hum of machines. After Damon's arrest, investigations confirmed everything. He had been embezzling funds for years and had orchestrated the car crash to seize full control of Hart Robotics. The revelation shocked everyone, but for Evelyn, it brought both relief and pain. Family betrayal left scars deeper than any physical injury. Late one evening, after another exhausting day of press inquiries, she rolled into the empty lab. The soft glow of the monitors lit the room, and there he was, Noah, leaning over the Phoenix prototype, adjusting one of the stabilizers. He looked up when he heard her. "You are still here," she said softly. "So are you," he replied with a faint smile. "I figured you would not want to celebrate with the reporters." "I do not want to celebrate at all," she admitted. "I just want a little quiet." He nodded. "Then you came to the right place." She watched him work for a moment, then asked, "Do you ever regret helping me? It nearly got you in trouble." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Helping you was the best thing I ever did. Trouble was worth it." She exhaled, her voice low. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just a mechanic who stumbled into the wrong dinner. Turns out, maybe you were exactly who I needed all along." He chuckled. "You are giving me too much credit." "No," she said, her tone firm but gentle. "You saw me when I could not see myself." For a moment, silence filled the room again, broken only by the faint whir of the machines. Noah walked over and placed something on her desk, the same silver pen she had used to sign every contract since the company's founding. "You dropped this during the presentation," he said. She picked it up slowly, fingers brushing the engraved words, "Dream, build, move." "It is funny," she said. "I thought this pen represented what I lost, but now it feels like a reminder of what I still have." "You built something bigger than a company," he said. "You built a second chance." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "For both of us, maybe." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I was not sure when to give you this," he said. "It is not what you think, it is just a prototype accessory." He opened the box to reveal a sleek metallic wrist brace, custom designed to support fine motor control. "It is part of the new line," he explained. "But this one is yours." I added a little engraving. She took it, heart-catching as she read the words etched on the side. "Keep going, Noah," she whispered, her throat tight. "You did not have to be, I wanted to," he said quietly. "You helped me believe that fixing things is not just about machines. It is about people too." She smiled, blinking back tears. "You always know what to say." "Not always," he said with a nervous laugh. Sometimes I just hope it comes out right. She slipped on the brace, feeling its weight, its warmth, its meaning. It is perfect, she said. He exhaled, relieved, then looked at her with a soft seriousness. Evelyn, now that everything is out, what are you going to do next? She looked toward the glass window overlooking the city skyline. Start over, she said, but not alone this time. The silence that followed was tender, unhurried. Then she turned back to him, smiling faintly. You still owe me dinner, remember? He blinked, surprised. Dinner? You sat at my table by accident, she reminded him. Seems only fair we do it properly this time. His grin widened. I would like that, she laughed quietly. Good, because this time I am picking the place. The two of them stood there, framed by the soft light of the lab, the woman who had learned to stand again, and the man who had taught her she could. Outside, the city pulsed with new beginnings, and for the first time in a long time, Evelyn Hart allowed herself to believe in one. A year later, the world looked different for both of them. Hart Robotics had become a beacon of innovation and hope, not just for technology, but for humanity itself. The Phoenix Project was now fully operational, providing mobility solutions to thousands of patients who once believed they would never walk again. But the most powerful transformation was the one no camera had captured: the quiet evolution of Evelyn Hart's heart. She had traded the sterile penthouse isolation for a more modest home near the sea, one with wide hallways and sunlight spilling through every room. The mornings no longer began with board meetings, but with laughter and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Noah Brooks was there, exactly where he belonged, tinkering with spare parts at the breakfast table, his tools spread beside a half-eaten plate of pancakes. You know, Evelyn said, wheeling closer with a smile, most people eat breakfast before they rebuild it. Noah grinned, wiping his hands on a towel. Most people do not live with someone who breaks coffee machines for fun. She laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. Her movements were steadier now. Thanks to months of rehabilitation and the advanced Phoenix frame Noah had helped design, she could stand and walk short distances with the aid of her robotic support. Every step was deliberate, but it was hers. She reached for a cup and filled it with coffee, glancing out toward the ocean view. The press keeps asking if I will return as full-time CEO, she said softly. Are you going to? He asked. She hesitated, then smiled. No. I think I finally learned how to let go. Hart Robotics does not need a figurehead anymore. It needs leaders with heart, and it already has them. You mean the new board you trained? Noah teased. Or the stubborn mechanic who keeps fixing your appliances? She chuckled. Maybe both. He leaned back, studying her. You know, I never thought I would end up here building something that actually matters. You built more than machines, she said gently. You built me back up. He looked down, a little shy, his voice quiet. You did that yourself. I just handed you a wrench. They both laughed, and for a while there was only the soft crash of waves outside and the hum of life happening their kind of peace. Later that afternoon they drove to the Hart Foundation Center, where a new rehabilitation wing was being unveiled. Cameras flashed as Evelyn walked slowly across the stage, supported by her exoskeleton frame, each step deliberate and graceful. The crowd erupted into applause. Noah watched from the front row, his chest tight with pride. When the noise settled, she spoke into the microphone, her voice calm but full of emotion. 1 year ago, I stood in front of you all for the first time in months. I stood not because of science alone, but because of faith. Faith that broken things can be rebuilt, that loss can lead to purpose, and that the people we meet by accident can change the entire course of our lives. Her eyes found Noah in the audience. The Phoenix Project was never about walking. It was about rising. Not just for me, but for everyone who refuses to give up. When she stepped down from the podium, Noah met her halfway. The crowd parted as if they knew what was about to happen. She smiled up at him, tears glinting under the lights. You once said fixing things was what you do, she whispered. Well, I think you fixed me. He shook his head, voice low and steady. No, Evelyn, you fixed both of us. Then, reaching into his jacket pocket, he pulled out the old silver pen, the same one she had used to sign the Phoenix patent. You might want this back, he said. She frowned in confusion until he opened the cap and revealed a small ring tied around the clip. Her breath caught. Noah, I thought maybe it was time you signed a new chapter, he said softly. The crowd gasped, then fell silent as she nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger as the audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but for Evelyn and Noah, the world faded away. They stood together under the bright lights, two souls who had met by mistake, healed by choice, and built a life not of luxury but of love, justice, and second chances. And somewhere in the background, the robotic arm of Phoenix whirred softly, a living echo of their story, whispering the words engraved on it: dream, build, move.